everyone, today I thought I would sit and film my January wrap-up. I've read some great books this month, and the first one I read is down here, which is Billy Connolly's Windswept and Interesting. I treated myself to this because I had a WH Smith's voucher and it was half price, so that was great. I love Billy Connolly. I saw him live, I don't know, a long time ago, and he was just amazing. He was so funny. It hurt. I laughed so much. I wanted him to just stop and go away because it was painful. Yeah, so I really, really like him. And I've read the biography that his wife wrote about him, Pamela Stevenson. I think it's called Billy. And I've also got the Tall Tales and, what's it called? Tall Tales and Wee Stories that came out last year, I think. And that's kind of just his stand-up routines, but this one is his autobiography, and I really enjoyed it. One of the things that I liked about this, if you're a fan of Billy Connolly, there are some stories in there which are from his stand-up, but there's also an awful lot that isn't, so it's not just stuff you will have heard before. And of course he's known for being an amazing storyteller, but I loved the way he dealt with things that were sad or difficult from his life. He just tells them with such humour and such an amazing perspective. I loved it, and if you're a fan, I would recommend. Like I said, there were a lot of things in here that I hadn't seen in his stand-up or anything like that, so yeah, very good. And something I enjoyed is that he actually dictated this book because of his Parkinson's, and he the software he used couldn't interpret his Glaswegian accent, and so he had to get his daughters to help transcribe it, which I thought was very funny. But yeah, really liked it. So I'll put that back and let me check what the next book I read is. Where is my phone? Who knows? The next one I read was After the End by Clare Mackintosh. My sister-in-law lent me this, so I'll put a picture up here because I gave it back to her. I really like Clare Mackintosh. I've read a couple of her books before. And this one was really different. Her previous ones I've read are kind of crime. I believe she's an ex-policewoman. I'll put below if that's not true, but I think she is, and that would be why she's great at writing crime. But as I say, this one was different. So in this book, there's a couple who have a child who is terminally ill with brain cancer, and obviously there's a huge trigger warning in here for a whole lot of stuff around poorly children. So the mother is looking after the child a lot in intensive care, and the father is working very hard and travelling around, and they're a really devoted couple and they love their child. And they discuss with the doctors what's going to happen moving forward, and the doctor kind of says there's nothing more we can do. So you have the choice of either doing some treatment to extend the little boy's life for as long as you can, or withdrawing treatment. And what happens then is so interesting, and just a scenario I wouldn't have considered. I don't want to say too much because I feel like it's a really great point in the book that I don't want to spoil. So yeah, and it follows kind of what happens and the decisions that are made. It's very, very good, and it's told with such a lot of heart, and it transpires that Clare Mackintosh did have a child that was terminally ill and had to deal with similar circumstances, so I'm not surprised she wrote it so beautifully. It's really, really touching and yeah, lovely in a sad way, but just so heartfelt. It's probably the best word for that. So I really enjoyed that. I do recommend Clare Mackintosh. I love her writing. Then I read The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. Again, I borrowed this from my sister-in-law, so I'll put a picture up here. And I've seen this one around, but I didn't really know very much about it. And in this book you have a character called Nella, and Nella marries into a rich merchant family in Amsterdam, and her family are kind of an old family, so her name has meaning, but they are on hard times financially, so she's marrying into this rich family. And when she moves in, it's all very odd, quite mysterious. Her husband doesn't really spend any time with her, and he buys her this cabinet, which is like a doll's house, for her to entertain herself. And she's the lady of this house, but she doesn't get a whole lot of respect. It seems that there's a lot going on that she doesn't know about, and she's kind of told to keep herself to herself. And she starts to uncover mysteries about the house and kind of people's secrets, I guess. And it also centres around the miniaturist that she hires to make the pieces for this doll's cabinet. And I thought this was a really interesting book. It's an odd concept. It had a strange feel to it. It had mystical undertones. It had an interesting concept and an interesting tone to it. And in general, I really liked it. It was gripping reading. I read it in a couple of days, and it very much centred around themes of, you know, who people love and how that was very difficult in that society. And so there's various relationships portrayed, and it's quite sad in parts and quite gritty in parts. And yeah, it covers a gay relationship and how that was treated and viewed. And so, yeah, very interesting. And I think I sort of finished it and thought, wow, like I really devoured it, but I liked it, but I felt that there was something about the atmosphere of the book that I found odd, is all I can say, but it was good. And again, I would recommend. And then I read Get Divorced, Be Happy by Helen Thorn. Now, I wanted to read this book because I listened to the Scummy Mummies podcast, and Helen Thorn is one of the Scummy Mummies, and they've been talking about this book loads. It came out recently. So yeah, I'll link that podcast below in case you haven't come across it. It's very funny. But the thing is, I use my husband's Amazon account when I read Kindle books. Well, in general, I order everything on his Amazon account. And I use his Kindle to read books. So, and I actually had to ask him because I couldn't log into his account. I was like, could you buy this book? It's called Get Divorced, Be Happy. And he kind of looked at me. So yeah, as I say, I was reading it because I really like Helen Thorn. It was interesting though. She talks about what happened in her relationship and her recovery from breakup, along with lots of practical things about being single again. And although I am perfectly happily married, it's interesting to reflect on your relationship and I guess also what makes you happy, because she very much rediscovered herself and what made her happy after her relationship ended. So it made me reflect on kind of who I am within my marriage, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, although very happily married, it was just an interesting read. Also, my parents divorced, so it was kind of an interesting perspective into what was going on for them when I was younger. So yeah, interesting. But Helen interviews lots of professionals and there's lots of sort of research brought into it from lots of different like psychology and legalities and money, and there's some opinion bits in there from like bloggers and people who've been through divorce, and her best friend has a section in it. And it's just, yeah, kind of empowering and uplifting and absolutely readable, even if you have no intention to get divorced, even though it may have worried my husband a little bit. So yeah, I did really enjoy it, and I'd recommend whether you are, you know, going through that process, have gone through that process. I think it's, as I say, it is very uplifting, or just you want to read it because it's quite funny. I mean, there's nothing funny about divorce, but she's a comedian, so she has a really funny and uplifting tone, but it's still really honest and raw. And she went through her breakup over the pandemic, so that added a whole nother layer. And she just, you know, talks about what she went through and how she has overcome it, and you know, the person she is now, and lots of tips. And yeah, I mean, I'd recommend whether you are, you know, going through that process, have gone through that process, or you just want to read something by Helen Thorn. So even if it did worry my husband a little bit, but yeah, I did really enjoy it. Let me know what you have been reading this month. Have you read anything good that you would recommend to me? And have you read any of the books that I've talked about in this video? And what did you think? I would love to know. So don't forget to hit like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more videos like this one. Take care.